All right. If you've been following the Google Analytics certificate, you might have noticed that there have been thousands, in fact, 136,000 participants enrolled in the Google certificate as of this morning. If you're starting to get a little worried, that could be understandable for sure. I have Maddie B here with me to talk about this issue and go over our thoughts. So, what is your initial reaction to this explosion of participants in this program?
Man, well, first off, Braden, thanks for having me on here. I'm super excited to be talking to you about this. I think this is a really important question. So when you first messaged me about it, I was just like, dang, that's a good question. Like why I need to be addressing this because I'm going through the process of taking this course, the certificate program as well. And every time I log in, I'm seeing more and more people enrolled. More and more people are posting on LinkedIn about, they've already completed the program, or they're completing course 1 or 2 or 3. There's 8 different courses. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of excitement around this program. And I think it's rightfully earned, right? So if you look at it on a timeline, Google's a little bit late to the game, to be honest, right? They've been putting out a lot of content with their, I think they call them like career certificate programs. And coming into the analytics space at this point in time, there's so many boot camps and Udemy courses and other Coursera courses and Udacity and you name it. There's just a bunch of content out there. So coming in at this point in time, I think they did it the right way. And what I mean by that is they put a lot of thought into it. You can't come in this late and not bring the thunder. And I think they've
Yeah.
done that. I think they have a very well thought out course. It's been getting a lot of attention, not just because of it's Google, right? It's been getting a lot of attention because word of mouth and people are excited about it. They're talking about it. And you go on LinkedIn, you can't avoid it. Everybody's posting about it. So I think the fact that, yeah, there's 135,000 people enrolled right now, that number is going to continue to grow. And I think it's going to grow like crazy. I wouldn't be shocked by the end of the year. We're going to be, over 250,000 people in there. My gut reaction to it though, is it's sort of, I'm gonna take off the kitten mittens for a second because I feel like I am positive about the course. I do think it's a good program. I do think that Google has done a good job. That said, there's only so much control that one can have over what happens with these programs, right? So a lot of people are coming in, and one of the things I've noticed just in the past week is some of the top traffic that's going to my videos that are going through this course is people looking for answers to the course questions, right? So they're like, what are the answers to course number 1, Google certificate program? And they're ending up on my site, and they're probably giving me thumbs down because I'm not giving the answers. But I think you're getting this. There's got to be a large portion of the people who are going through this. They're just trying to muscle through and get that cert and then just move on with life and try to put it on their resume, add a notch to their belt. And man, I think there's going to be a rude awakening for a lot of people who see this. They saw the idea that there's going to be career services associated with it. Oh, you could potentially get a job. This could potentially replace a degree. Man, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to have to, come to Jesus at the end of this and realize like, man, it's going to be whatever you make it. And if all you're doing is just plowing through and getting answers to questions and then getting that certificate at the end, it's not going to do what you think it's going to do. So my gut reaction is it's a good program, but there's a lot of issues, I think, with online programs in general. And just because you're Google doesn't mean you're going to avoid that. So that's my
Yeah, for sure.
reaction.
That was along the same lines as my initial reaction to this program. A lot of excitement and curiosity. It's like, oh wow, this is Google. It's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the outlines for the program came out, then I realized, yeah, this is covering a lot of the essentials. This is going to produce good analysts. But like you said, for those people who are going in and expecting, okay, I'm just going to power through it. I only want to spend $30 on this, so I'm going to do it in a month, and looking up answers. That's not
Yep.
going to do anything for them. And
Yeah.
one of the big issues too, I think, is this certificate program is only going to be as good as the people coming out of it. So
Mhm.
if people are rushing through it and wanting to get a job, then and they get a job and do a bad job, then people are going to realize that and stop caring about this certificate program, and it's going to ruin the experience for a lot of other people.
Yeah. And that's going to take time, right, to flesh itself out. But I think that's completely valid. You look at, I'm going to make probably a terrible analogy, but I'm going to try anyway. But you look at like business school or something like that. Uh, I did my MBA many, many moons ago, but the value of an MBA program is sort of, it's your cohort, it's the alumni network, it's the people who've been there, who are going to go through it, who the professors, all of that stuff. And if you have a weak cohort, you have people who don't have the right experience or who don't bring the right credentials or thought processes or, you name it, to the table, then you're going to be limited in what you can accomplish. So same goes for something like this. If the only people who are pursuing this are people who are, they either lack any formal education, or they don't have, they don't fit one of the typical buckets, right? They're just kind of cruising through it. Then that certificate being associated with them and trying to accomplish something, yeah, of course, it's going to make the bigger picture look a little bit more questionable. Like, is this really going to get what we want it to? So I think in order to sort of like mitigate that faction, you have to look at, so who are the people taking this course, right? You've probably got people who are brand spanking new, who don't have any work experience, but they want to get into the field. You've probably got people who are, they're working in some either peripheral field, or it doesn't even have to be peripheral. It could just be any professional situation, and they're interested in the space. So work experience, no work experience. And then you could have people like me, the old crusties, who are involved in analytics and have been for some time. And we're just trying to figure out what all the fuss is about. We're just trying to figure out, is number one, testing, your current knowledge base, understanding foundations, making sure everything's up to snuff, but also, hey, this has got a lot of attention. I should be paying attention, right? So I should be part of that. If it's getting that much fanfare, I should be aware, right? I'm in the industry. So
Yeah,
there's a lot to think about here.
definitely. That reminds me of the big issue here is with all of these people coming out into the market, is it going to flood the job market, oversaturate it so that people can't get jobs, that salaries are going to decrease because the supply is up? And like you said, we need to focus on what type of people are taking this course. We have a bunch of different people. So who is that supply, or who is the Google Analytics certificate for?
Mm-hmm.
What is your thoughts on how the Google Analytics professional certificate is going to shape the market in the future?
Yeah. I mean, it's it's such a deep question that I could probably talk for hours about. So let me try to narrow my thoughts. So my immediate reaction is, we've already talked about the fact that Google's late to the game. So yeah, it's exciting, it's impressive. 135,000 people have signed up. 135,000 people haven't completed it. That's for sure. I think you've got some stats. I've seen some stats, but I mean, you've got somewhere between 5 to 15% completion rate for online courses. So,
Yeah.
we're talking about, I don't know, 5 to 15,000 people who might complete out of this existing cohort. It's a big number, but if you are to believe some of the data that Google themselves published when they were launching the course, there's, almost 400,000 open positions out there right now for data analysts. So there are a lot of positions out there, but what I was trying to get at initially is that this 135,000 it's nothing new. A lot of these people are probably the same people who are taking courses on Udemy, courses on these other places, these other marketplaces, or other courses that we've talked about, where you've got millions of people registered, right? This isn't a new thing. People taking online courses is not a new thing. They've always been there. I think what makes the Google cert in this case a little different is that they are actively promoting it as a substitute for a degree. That's what makes this interesting. And I I don't know how successful that's going to be in the long run for people who take this, depending on which of those buckets they're in. I think when you think about a degree replacement, you're thinking effectively about like a trade school, somebody going to a trade school. And that's fine. You know, if you want to learn a trade, it's a great way to just stay focused. You don't have to deal with general education, any of that kind of stuff, and you can get in and get busy. When you're dealing with the analytics space or any of these like business environments, I don't see the vast majority of companies just pivoting because Google said so and ignoring degree requirements for most of their jobs. I just don't see it. Sure, they've got this laundry list of companies that they say, hey, you can apply for positions at these companies because they've all agreed with us, wink, wink. I will believe it when I see it, right? All of those companies that have positions right now, if you don't have any experience, you can go out and apply to them right now. Like you don't need Google to give you that permission. You can go apply. And if you've got a good profile, then good luck to you. But just because you're able to apply doesn't mean you're going to get the job. Doesn't mean that the hiring process is any different, right? They may just change what they're looking for as far as four-year degree versus this program. But best believe they're going to look at your entire profile, your resume, your LinkedIn, your whatever, you know, any references that you've got to get past that. Then you've got to interview. If you're using this certificate as your ticket to ride instead of a degree, you're going to get you're going to get questioned about it. Like, what did you learn? Talk me through this. Tell me about the, you know, same thing that they would if you were coming from a degree program. And then you've got to get hired. You have to prove to them that you're what they're looking for. So the hiring process isn't necessarily going to change, even if one of those criteria, you know, gets adjusted. So I don't know that I even answered the question. I have a hard time believing that this very impressive 135,000 and growing number is going to change the playing field, at least in the near term. I think there's a bigger likelihood that things like automation and other tools is going to have a greater impact on entry-level data analytics than any certificate program ever will. That's just my reaction.
Yeah, actually, in some of my jobs that I do in my current job as a data analyst, I'm like, I think Google can do just as good as I can. You send out a Google form and ask a few questions, and they already summarize it for you. So that automation is definitely a scary part of every time I see it.
Exciting, you know, it depends on the lens. But yeah, I get it. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I have done a little bit of reading, and there is a report put out by IBM and Glassdoor, I think. They analyzed what they thought was going to happen with the job market. And this report came out in 2017, and they estimated that there would be, I think, over 400,000 data related roles opening up in the next 3 years. And that includes a lot more than just analysts. But when you look at it, if only 5 to 15% of these 130,000 certificate people finish, then that's only just a drop in the bucket, right?
It really is. Yeah. And I have no reason to question those results, those numbers. I think those are probably pretty accurate. Every report that I see on like the state of data, right, is we are only accelerating in our accumulation and creation of data. Like data is going nowhere. It's more a matter of how are we going to manage the data we've got. Most companies produce way more data than they even have the time, wherewithal, or resources to analyze as it is. That's where a lot of those initial positions are coming from. But once we get to a point where, you know, humans can't even handle the volume, that's where a lot of these other tools and technologies are going to have to step in and help kind of whittle that down. But it's also going to require humans to program those things and understand what the heck they're doing and what they're trying to extract and the value and things like that. So this is sort of the punchline. I'm not worried that this program is going to devalue or cause a flood of, you know, analysts into the market. I think more analysts is a good thing. I really do. I think if there's open positions, then we need more analysts. So the more analysts, the merrier. I just hope that, you know, they get the most out of the program and don't devalue it by muscling through and then not, taking anything away from it. I think that's sort of the message there.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you. It's exciting to have all this data that we can use and analyze and create better products and better services for people. And if we don't have the training or the professionals in order to interpret and analyze that data, then we're not progressing as quickly as we could. So it is exciting to have the opportunity for more people to get into this profession. And I don't think it's going to cause a lot of disturbances in the market. It could eventually for brand new analysts who are trying to get in, where they're competing against everybody who's similar to them. If you're applying to the same job where 20,000 people with the same Google certificate, but that's not reality, right? The people who are enrolled in this certificate program are from all over the world, and they're not going to be applying to the same jobs. It'll be interesting for sure.
I do want to make it clear that I acknowledge entry-level analytics positions are incredibly competitive as it is. I don't want to diminish that at all. I acknowledge that, because of the growing interest, because of so many people wanting to get in the field, they all got to start somewhere. And it is a relatively new space. It's growing, it's exploding, right? So there's a ton of people out there wanting to get in, and those entry-level positions are the most competitive. It's like the hardest to get into. That's why I hear a lot of people encourage folks who are actually entry level, or they bring some work experience to the table and they're trying to transition into the space, to look at maybe higher level positions that they could work themselves into, because it's less competitive, less people meet the criteria, but there's still a need to fill those roles. It's just, it is a tricky and highly dynamic and changing environment. So, just hats off to all the people trying to get in right now. I know it's not easy, and I was fortunate that I got in way before it was in fashion. So I don't discount that one bit. So just 2 cents.
For sure. So if your best friend came up to you and said, I want to be a data analyst and I'm thinking about taking the Google certificate, what would be your recommendations to them?
My recommendation would be to, number one, take your time, have goals. So I talk about some of this stuff in some of my curriculum that I'm in the process of creating, but like, having goals is paramount, right? You have to know why you're doing what you're doing. So if the goal is to get in, then that's a valuable goal. I mean, knowing the type of company you want to work for, like, the networking can start now. And so that means that knowing what I know about this program, it's going to say, take your time, do all of the activities, right? So there's a lot of things. So I'm doing this for exposure to what's going on, not necessarily to learn, unless there's something that I think is valuable to learn, of course. But I'm not doing all the practice tests. I'm not doing all the community engagement. I'm not doing a lot of those things that I think somebody who's new. So if my friend came up to me, I'd say, don't do as I do. Go through all that process, engage in that community, talk to people, and then go on LinkedIn. And then when you learn something new, share it, talk about it. That's a good way to quickly reinforce things that you're learning in the program. And not only that, you start to build little breadcrumbs to, your development process. Potential recruiters are going to see that. They're going to see what you're doing, how you're learning, how you're evolving, and how excited you are about the space, right? There's a lot of these little tidbits that even this program's not talking about very much. So I think you could take this thing as a platform, a foundation for a platform, and really talk through what you're doing. And I would just say, use it as a testing ground. Because if you think you want to get into this and you don't have any experience, and this is the experience, pay attention to what's going on in your head. If you find yourself struggling to get through it because you're just not interested, maybe that's a sign that you're just kind of feeling a little FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, that, hey, this industry is blowing up. That doesn't mean it's for you necessarily, right? So just being honest with yourself, paying attention. If you do, you love it, you're enjoying it, you're learning it, you're checking all those boxes, then just keep at it. And don't be afraid to tell more than just me. Tell people in your network what you're doing and why. And then that will help set the stage as you get further in the process and you're going to start looking for a job. More people are aware. I think people take for granted the idea that, you know, everybody must know what I'm involved in or what my goals are. So I don't need to go and tell them. Just just let people know. Let your friends know, let your family know that this is something that you're working on. This is something you care about. And by the way, if you hear anything, let me know if there's opportunities or things like that. You know, a lot of jobs come by these little funny secondary referrals from, oh, my sister heard so and so had an opening at their company if you're interested. And then you start to have those conversations. So I'm rambling a bit, but it was a good question. I had to put on a different hat for that. And I'm getting into like networking mode because networking is everything. So it's not just about learning the hard skills, learning the technical stuff. It's about interacting with people and making sure this is really what you want, and then getting involved in the field. I think it's a great community of people in the analytics space right now. So
Yeah, I really like those suggestions. That's better than anything I would have suggested. I, I
I don't
like
know about
the
that, but hopefully it was
oh,
helpful.
yeah, I like the idea of giving that breadcrumb, that bread trail of posts and links on your LinkedIn account, and that's a good way to make yourself stand out from the crowd when you're
Mm-hmm.
doing the same certificate program that everybody else is. If my friend were to come up to me and ask me like, "Oh, do you think this program is worth it? Should I invest my time in that?" I would say, "Yeah, for sure." And I like the idea where you said this could be a good testing ground. You're not
Mm-hmm.
putting 4 years and tens of thousands or potentially hundreds of $1,000s
Yep.
into a degree program. You can test it out, see if you like it, because it's not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But that
Yeah.
that way you can know, because it is a great job. I mean, I get why people want to be data analysts and get into the data field. I'm
I
in
agree.
Canada, and I there's construction around my house, and I see those guys working outside in -30-degree weather. I'm like,
Oh
I'm glad
gosh.
I'm in my house just typing, crunching some numbers. So yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good. I think that context is super important. Just being able to understand, and this is something you just said made me think more. And I might have already kind of hinted at this, but the whole degree replacement idea, I don't see it as a full on degree replacement. I feel like it is because degree requirements, anybody who's been in a hiring position, right? Um, with certain exclusions, right? You're going to have Fortune 50 companies that are very exclusive. They know what schools they're hiring from, what degrees they require, this, that, and the other thing. They have a very clear process for getting into those roles, right? Most companies aren't that stringent. Most companies, when they post a position, they say you need a bachelor's degree or you
Mm.
need a master's degree. They don't say what kind. What they're really looking for is evidence that you've seen something through and you've succeeded at doing that. You've got a general education with some sort of focus that may or may not be related to this. Like I've hired analysts that don't have analytics degrees. They don't even have finance degrees. They don't have accounting degrees. I've hired people with all sorts of degrees. And sometimes people outside of the space bring the most creative ideas to the table, right? Because they were attracted to the field because of passion or whatever it was. So when I think of like a degree replacement, I think maybe a computer science specific degree or a data analytics specific degree replacement to complement somebody who's maybe got a degree in another field, an unrelated field, right? So then it starts to make more sense. Like if you've got a 4-year degree and you're a career changer who wants to get into the space, this is a great way to do that. And I think those are the people who are going to find the most success in this are the people wanting to get in who bring a skill set, a track record of work, a degree of some kind, and they kind of know what they're getting into and they're going to put in the right effort. The people who have no degree, no experience, who are just muscling through the cert, they're going to have a much harder time because they're going to be competing with those other people. That's the reality. I don't know what it was that you said that made me get off on that, but yeah, that was just thoughts that went through my head real quick.
Yeah, that's a good point, which I never thought about, that combination of people with a degree and then getting the certificate program. And that's one thing that people who are enrolling in the certificate program need to be aware of, who they're going to be competing against. And that doesn't mean if you don't have a degree, you shouldn't take this until you get a degree.
Yeah.
You can still find success, I believe, with this certificate program, but you have to temper your expectations. The job market is going to be tough. It's difficult for people with those degrees to find good jobs. So you might have to take a job that's a little less than what you were hoping for, but I think it's possible for sure for those people to get into the field, break into the field. And I really like the setup of this program. In some cases, people who are taking this certification will do a lot better than, or learn a lot more than, people in a computer science degree about data analytics specifically.
Yeah.
Asking good questions and what types of processes you need to go through to make sure you have good data. In a computer science degree or a STEM degree, you could be missing a lot of that information. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a recurring theme. You know, there's been this slight proliferation of people really kind of like myself who are promoting the softer skill side of things. And I don't know that I consider what I tend to focus on to be soft skills. I think they're necessary skills. It's a lot of strategy and you know, communication, networking, all of those things that I feel are imperative. I don't think there's anything soft about them, but just in general terms, you know what I'm talking about. But you're absolutely right. People coming in with a computer science degree, they like the technology, they like the hard components of it, but every company is looking for people who can communicate. They're looking for people who can not just do the techno wizardry stuff, but that can tell you what it is that they're doing and why, or they can understand what the business question is that's being asked and how they can use their technical skills to help answer that question. It's not about the tools, it's about the analysis, or it's about the analyst, right? This is another thing I harp on, is like, you are the analyst. You use the tools. It's important. I don't care what tool you use. It's more a matter of knowing what each tool does and being able to pull the right one from your belt at the right time and use it to help solve a problem in the most efficient way possible. So what this program does is, like you said, it sets up all of that soft skill stuff. And what are the foundations? You got to ask questions. You got to understand where data comes from and why do we collect it? How do we collect it? You know, why is data inherently dirty and what do you do about that? You know, real world is never going to be as pristine as any of these little sandbox data sets that you're probably dealing with in school and mock situations. And that's another thing I think Google's done well here, is highlight the fact that, hey, data is inherently imperfect. Deal with it. Here's how.
Yeah. Every person getting into the real world data, I think, is blindsided by how messy and dirty data can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's one thing that I like on your YouTube channel, is the emphasis that you have on these soft skills, right? Mm-hmm. And you also have a couple of courses that discuss what you need to focus on to be an analyst, what it takes to be certain types of data analysts. As we know, data analyst is a really broad term that is used sometimes incorrectly by job postings.
Oh, yeah.
and
never
stuff.
Trust a job posting.
Yeah. So if any of you are interested in some of Matt's courses, I'll leave a link to those below. I've actually taken them myself and quite enjoyed them. But yeah, thanks for joining me today, Matt, and discussing this problem. Was there anything else that was on the top of your mind?
You know, I don't think so. I know, you know, I guess just for full disclosure, my name is Matt Bratton. Braden called me Matty B because one of my videos I mentioned that everybody calls me Matty B. So you're welcome to do that because we're friends now. So It's what a lot of my coworkers call me. It's just it kind of stuck. Somebody said it once and it just stuck. So Matty B or Matt Bratton. I'm the founder of tmbanalytics.com, and like Braden said, he'll drop a link. But I have a free foundational course on my website. It's tmbanalytics.com/free training. You can go in and check it out. It's just a mini course that gives you a really good overview of what it means to be an analyst, and kind of goes through the different roles, the way that you might progress in your career, and just gives you a lot of that information. So I think that would be the only other thing I'd want to say, is that I love analytics. My day job, I'm a VP of analytics for a software company. And I'm here, on the weekend, just hanging out with Braden, talking data. Like it's just what makes me happy. So if you're interested in the field, number one, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, Braden's channel, then you should do that right now. And then when you're done with that, go check out a couple of my videos. And if you like what you see, then, by all means, subscribe.